Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. Sit back, relax, stay sinful. Story number 1. I have a lot of memories of AOL dial-up throughout my childhood and early teenage years. At that time, random creeps popping up in your chat was a common thing, and something you just routinely ignored. But after the AOL incident, my attitude about the internet was forever changed. I was staying with my cousin Jesse for a few weeks in summer in Calumet City, a suburb of Chicago. It was 1998 or 1999. Me, 13 or 14, my cousin a year or so younger. Her bedroom was in their remodeled attic. We were sprawled out on the floor at her laptop past midnight, giggling and chatting away with her friends on AOL. Then an unknown user with some ridiculous combination of demonic words, plus a string of sixes, IM'd her. It just said 666. How original. She supposed it was one of her friends messing with her. She replied with something like, "Haha, very funny. Who is this? Justin?" They didn't waste much time playing around. "We know where you live, and we're coming for you." We laughed it off, but also made sure her address wasn't posted in her profile. It wasn't. I assured her it was probably someone just having fun scaring kids. A new IM popped up. We're at Holy Cross Cemetery, about 5 minutes away now. We squealed. Holy Cross was 5 minutes away from the house. We flew downstairs and made sure all the doors were locked. We decided not to wake my aunt and uncle yet, because if it was a friend of hers playing a joke on us, they wouldn't be too happy about being woken up in the middle of the night. We made it back upstairs, locked her door, clicked off her light, and stationed ourselves in her window seat among a mountain of stuffed animals. We waited, peering out of the little triangle window to the street below. Not 2 minutes go by, and we see headlights parked up the road, but we can't see a vehicle. Then, the headlights moved forward, and a large black van came into view and parked 2 doors down from our house. Part of it felt like our imaginations were running wild. The other part like our worst nightmare was about to come true. The door slid open and 2 large bald-headed men in black clothing jumped out. "What are they doing?" I asked frantically. Jessie was frozen, her eyes full to the brim with tears. "Jessie, why are they looking at the trash cans? Jessie!" I shook her arm and she snapped out of it. "Because the addresses are on them." Just as she says this, we realize one of the men is on the sidewalk in front of us, holding her trash can looking at the house. We snapped into action. "Send them an IM. Tell them the police are almost here." I ran through the upstairs, flicking on lights, hoping they would believe the whole house was awake. I started down the stairs toward the living room. I remembered there was a light switch panel for the living and dining rooms at the bottom of the stairs, and was relieved because I was terrified to step foot down there. I flicked them on and light flooded the rooms downstairs. I heard voices from outside, muffled, shouting. I ran back upstairs to Jessie's room and found her sitting in the window seat, sobbing. He was walking towards the house when the downstairs lights went on. He yelled and another man ran from around the side of the house. They were gone. We hugged each other and cried and didn't sleep that night. In the morning, my aunt wondered why the trash can was on the sidewalk. We never told them, until last year, 13 years later. I guess we thought we wouldn't be able to use the internet anymore, and we were probably right. I still get chills up my spine when I hear those 3 traumatic words. You've got mail. Story number 2. My brother is 7 years older than me, so when I was 9 or 10, he was in high school and had to hide from our parents that he smoked and dipped tobacco. As a result, most of the days of the week, after he got home from school, we'd go into the woods for an hour or 2. We lived way out in the country in an already rural part of East Texas, so there were plenty of woods to explore. The land south of our house was all owned by a mining company. My parents didn't want us going out there, so we always crossed a fence to the north of our house and explored the woods out there. Very likely some locals' property that we had no business being on, but when you live out in the country, you figure you'll have plenty of signs before you accidentally walk into someone's backyard. After a few months of venturing out in this area, never traveling more than an hour's distance from our house, and always in daylight, we decided one day we'd just keep walking and walking. We entered big pastures and dove back into even deeper woods. Whenever we've talked about it, we've always said that we must have traveled at least a mile, but we usually say far more. Eventually, we came across a circular pond that I distinctly remember having a much higher rim on one side. My brother explained that this was because a tractor had dug it out and piled up more dirt on one side than the others. We kept going past the pond and entered a patch of woods. As we came out, we saw that the tree line curved around sharply to the right, and the clearing we now stood in opened up far wider. We went in that direction, and while my memory of getting there is a little hazy, I know we suddenly came across a very large white building, surrounded by a high fence. There was a gate large enough for vehicles to move in and out, and a dirt road leading away from the facility. We could hear the sounds of activity and could see people walking around the outside of the fence near the gate. I'm afraid any other detail I could give at this point might be colored by false memory or exaggerations from an imaginative young brain, so I'll wait to talk to my brother about it more before I go any further. At that moment, we both felt the spine-tingling terror, alerting the body that something about this was very wrong. We were not supposed to be here. We were at the very least going to get into some serious trouble. We were standing in the middle of a clearing, gawking at the facility of some kind on what was obviously someone else's property, and we were seeing something deep out into the woods that we had never seen. All this time we'd spent walking around these woods. If we'd just gone a ways further, we would have stumbled across this. I remember standing there for a moment longer, asking my brother what this could possibly be. He told me something along the lines of, "I have no clue, but we should really get the fuck out of here." The tone of his voice truly freaked me out, and I remember running hard back the way we came, crossing the same pond, and cutting a path as close as possible to the route we had traveled. When we finally stopped out of breath, my brother told me that in no way, shape, or form would I utter a word of this to our parents. They would always punish us, so he knew the trouble we would be in for taking his little brother into what was quite possibly danger. After that day, we kept going into those woods, but never that far. Over the years, my brother and I have brought this story up many times. Our parents have gotten way laxer since we've all grown up. We've even told them this story. We've added a lot of other weird ones to our arsenal at the same time, as our family has always lived by huge areas of land for us to wander around. Over the past few days, this event has really started to bother me. I told my wife about it in detail, and she was pretty amused. I thought I'd look around on Google Maps a little at the area we grew up in. I've never done this for specific reasons before, and what I've found or haven't found is really bizarre. Moving north from my old house, on Google Maps, I can very clearly make out the woods we spent our time in. When I go further north, I can see several large clearings, followed by more wooded areas. Eventually, I even found the circular pond, and I'm positive I can make out the higher end of the pond that we stood on, as my brother exclaimed how it could have been made. When I drag the map up further, I see what looks to be a clearing in the sharp curve of the tree line to where we saw the facility, but there's nothing there. No trace of a building, no evidence of a dirt road leading away from an old structure. It's just pasture and more trees. In fact, when I zoom out and look at the whole area, it doesn't seem possible for there to have been an operation of that scale that we saw out there. Just a little ways further north, The land becomes nothing but pasture with houses pressed up against a country road. For people to have come and gone from this area, they would have had to have had a road of some kind, as well as power lines stretched out to the building, but there's nothing like that on Google. In fact, there's really no spot on the map. It's like it was never there to begin with. It's been a few years since we talked about it, so I texted my brother earlier today to ask him if he still remembered this happening. He called me immediately after and said, "Hell yeah, man. That was a really weird day. You know how good I used to be in the woods, but that shit really freaked me out. We had to get out of there. This whole event feels more and more like something that we walked into that we shouldn't have seen. I still remember the feeling of dread upon finding the place and knowing that something bad would happen if we stuck around." Story number 3. I lived alone on the 4th floor of an on-campus apartment building when I was in college. Early one morning around 3 a.m., I was awakened by a knock at my door. I got up half asleep and went to the door and peeked out the peephole. A large man was standing on the other side of my door. I had lived in the building for a while and knew most of my neighbors, but this guy was unfamiliar to me. I didn't open the door but called out to the guy in the hall. "What do you want?" "I need to use your phone," he answered. "It's 3 a.m., I told him. "I know, my car broke down outside. I need to use your phone." I was still blurry-eyed and foggy-headed, but something was just weird, so I refused to open the door. The man got frustrated, said he was in need and that I was not being neighborly. I still refused to open the door and he proceeded to call me some choice names. Finally, after repeated refusals to open the door, he left and I went back to bed. I didn't think much of it until the next day when I was sitting in class, going over the whole event in my head. It struck me as very odd that this guy would choose my apartment to go to and ask for help. After all, I lived on the 4th floor in the middle of the hall. He didn't knock on any other doors, just mine. When he left my apartment, he didn't try any of my neighbors. He just left the building. I realized at that moment that he had likely targeted me. If I had lived on the 1st floor near the doors, I might have let it go. But on the 4th? He had gone up 4 flights of stairs and halfway down the hall just to ask me to use my phone. Right. The thought put a cold lump in my stomach, especially when I remembered that there was a payphone in the lobby of the building. Even now I get chills whenever I think about what might have happened had I opened my door. Story number 4. This story happened years ago when I was 6 or 7. My mom and dad went to go visit family for a reunion. The reunion was located at a beachside park, and there was a playground nearby. It was a fun day with swimming and barbecues, but the day was coming to a close. My parents were chatting with other adults, and I went to the playground because I was bored. I didn't think to tell my parents because I was a dumbass at that age. I assumed that they'd see me, so it was fine, right? As I was playing, a couple approached the playground. They were both Caucasian, with the lady had wavy red hair. She wore a faded overcoat and boots. The man was taller than her, and he had a bald head and was wearing a blue tracksuit. They both looked like middle-aged parents in their late 40s. I didn't care about them until they walked up to me. They then waved at me and said hi, so I said hi back. I didn't come down from the play set. They then asked me, "Hey, where are your friends?" Me being stupid said that I didn't come with any, and I just came with my relatives. I pointed in the direction of the beach. They weren't far enough that I couldn't see them, probably 100 or so feet away. The couple then tried to make small talk about stuff I liked, where I lived, my home phone number, all the red flags I'd run from today, but I was blind to them back then. Thankfully, I didn't remember my home phone number or address back then, and only answered questions about the things I liked. I started coming down the playset too, when the lady of the couple asked that question, the question that I've always remembered. "We can be your friends, you know. Don't you want a friend who will never let you go?" My response wasn't the most normal to the question. Instead of screaming for help, I hopped down from the other side of the playset towards my parents and called for them to come over. I believed I called out, "Mama, Papa, look, I made some new friends." Now, for the past 7 or so minutes, I guess, my parents and relatives were looking for me frantically since I wandered off. When I called for my parents, my mom heard and started to run over. I'm guessing she saw the couple. The couple looked at each other for half a second, realized my dumbass was not worth it, and ran off towards the parking lot. My mom then came to me and gave me a huge hug. She asked what had happened, and I told her about the friends I had made, what we talked about, and how I said they ran off. My mom just sighed and called the cops. My mom told them about what happened, and they asked me what the couple looked like. My descriptions were vague and basic at my age. The cops left and we decided to pack up and go home. On the way home, my mom gave the stranger danger talk, and I listened. I don't know if they were ever caught. I hope they were, for the sake of kids everywhere. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for future content. Email your true scary stories to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. I will leave a link to my email in the description box as well. Until we meet again, stay sinful.